Not on cryptographic attacks explained. So, cryptography is the practice of securing communication by encoding messages in such a way that only authorized parties can read them. However, as with any security measures, cryptographic systems are not infallible and can be subject to an attack. So, to discuss this further with me today, I have Mr. Ivan Suarez. He is a lead cybersecurity instructor at Old Dominion University, Norfolk, Virginia, and he has also held the same position at New Jersey Institute of Technology and Miami University. Now, Mr. Suarez holds a master's degree in IT from Atlantis University with 17 plus years of experience in project management, security system integrations, network engineering and design, and various operating systems. So over to you, Mr. Suarez. Thank you.
Thank you for that intro. I appreciate everyone's time today, and I appreciate everyone taking a minute to learn about this. And yes, to add to that note, I am almost done with my PhD. I am about 3 months from completing it. So definitely, it's a great opportunity to talk to you guys about these attacks and what's going on. And it's going to be a big change in the industry. The learning objective is going to be define the cryptographic. No, there's no background music. One second.
Hello? Ivan, I think you are on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on, but okay, perfect. That was weird. Perfect. So what I was talking about was very simple. Today's industry, we require the use of cryptography. Cryptography is one of those things that we are more and more today in higher and dire need. But the challenge is which one's right, how to use it, and how to evade attackers from taking advantage of us. That's a major component that we don't realize. So today's learning objective or outcomes is going to be to define cryptography and its main concepts, describe the Caesar shift and Vienier Caesar cipher, discuss AES algorithms, explain public key cryptography, and then also we're going to discuss about RSA, discuss security through obscurity, and explain what is a crypto analyst and cryptographic attacks. Okay. So remember that this all falls into the NIST core framework. Okay. And if you want to know about my NIST, NIST is the National Institute of Security for the government. Now, cryptography is taking plain data, open plain text data, encrypting it, applying a ciphertext, then decrypting it back to its original form. Now, understand, some people talk about hashing. Hashing is a one-way function, which we're going to go over. But encryption can be reversed. No matter what you do, the mathematical algorithm can be flipped back to its original form. That in itself is important because when you encrypt something, the last thing you want to do is not get your data. You want your data. So stream ciphers and block ciphers. A stream cipher is a method that ciphers occur. It encrypts one byte at a time. So one byte, the next byte, the next byte, the next byte, each one individually. A block cipher encrypts one block, and a block is a group of bytes into one entire cipher. Then it takes a next chunk, another big chunk, and then together one time. Some cryptologists think that the stream cipher is the better product because of its simplicity and speed. Others prefer block cipher because it adds more layers of encryption because you're not going through once, you're going through 2, 3, 4, 5 times over the same data. So you're consistently changing it. Now, classic cryptography focuses on confidentiality. Now we know this because in cybersecurity, we use the pillars. CIA. It's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But confidentiality is one of those components that we don't think about. See, confidentiality, as important as it is, it allows us to ensure ensure that the data itself is secure and that it's maintained accurately. Okay. Now, what if I told you that it is something as simple as us discussing, geez, I don't know, keeping things, not being used. What if I told you that the system itself is where we need to address it? Okay. Now, all in all, focusing on confidentiality is the importance of all this. Now, in cryptography, you got to send something to receive something, and you have to share a common key, which means that if I encrypt something today, I got to send it to you. And I also have to give you the key. But that key, how do I get it to you? How do I ensure that you have that key to decrypt it? That's a major problem, because when you have the key on both ends, it's the same thing being used to encrypt and decrypt. If one of those ends gets compromised, then all the data is gone. It's null and void. You can't trust it. So keys have to be the same. That's the most piece. It's a trivial to differ from one to another. If you change a key, a new key has to be issued. Now, I want you to think the complexity. Imagine if I have to send something across a continent. How do I get that key to that person? Well, I have to either hand deliver it, have somebody deliver it, or have them come to me. And then I have to worry about where they're storing it, where they're keeping it. Is it secure? Is it safe? Is it maintained? We don't know that. That's the biggest challenge. Now, transposition cipher is when we shift over that cipher, meaning when I give it to them, it goes to them another key, but it's shifted. And that change, I have to reflect to it. So if I say we moved over to 5, I know the other person will know that whatever I give them, change to 5. Substitution cipher is called a Caesar cipher. This is the most common cipher used. It's still being used today. Now, a Caesar cipher is simply a shifting of letters. And if you notice what I'm talking about, A is not A. A is actually D. So they shifted 3 letters. So whenever you see on the cipher D, E, F, that means A, B, C, not D, E, F. So that shift keeps it hard from understanding. And why is it called Caesar? Well, obviously the Roman times. Caesar used this to decrypt or encrypt his messages to his soldiers. And they knew that it was shifted over, so then they would rewrite it in the correct form. That was their tactic. And it all comes down to other wars we can talk about. Okay? Now, again, Caesar shift as an explanation right here is another shift right here. In that same example, where we shifted 3, well, here it is. A, B, C, D. And as you can see, here's a cipher. Here's the plain text. So if we use this to create a secret word, we can actually hide it. Encryption is like us taking that data and taking every single letter and then encrypting it and then showing the entire encryption. A ciphertext is right here. This is what it looks like. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. This is what it looks like right here. This is exactly a Caesar shift, but using that shifted letter. So the T is a Q, and there it is, T is Q. Now, breaking the Caesar shift is you can use it by brute force. A lot of systems, you can use Python, you can use other applications to build tools to find the cipher. Those start with 1, 2, 3, 4 shifts. Try and find where the data is legible. Now, what's stopping me from doing 2, 3, 4, 5 Caesar shifts, meaning one as 3, another one as 6, another one as 8, another one as 10. That means that they have to go through it multiple times to try and find that data. And even though the common person may not understand that, but when you look at it from a crypto analyst component, you're increasing the complexity, you're adding multiple layers of encryption, and you're making it difficult for the attacker or the, I guess you can say, the common person to realize that that data has been encrypted. Now, talking about encryption, ransomware. One of the most largest components that attackers do is they complete their attack, but their bug out, their way they get out, so they're not detected, is to commit a ransomware. They'll drop the virus, execute the virus, encrypt the entire hard drive, and let the person deal with that ransomware. But what they don't realize is that now they've been attacked, however what they did, and then the final component of that attack is that ransomware. So when you hear ransomware, think of what was really the attack, meaning their exit strategy was the ransomware to hide their tracks. Maybe there is no exit. Maybe there is no recovery. There are ransomwares that do that. One, for example, is NotPetya. NotPetya came out a few years ago where it encrypted systems and you paid for it. Well, it was never designed to be decrypted. Even though it was an encryption, there was never a solution to reverse it. Since that occurred, that's it. It's gone. It is gone. So the frequency analysis is distribution of English language into text. When you think about that, you're thinking about how these items are being converted. Now, veneer cipher. It's just like a Caesar cipher. Like I gave an explanation. You take Caesar and go over and over and over and over and over, and it shifts it over and over again. You use what's called a veneer table. It's used to disguise plain letters with an increased frequency. The weakness is repeating nature, meaning the constant repetition. Here's an example. This is a veneer table, how they shifted it over so many times. It looks in plain text as attack at dawn. Key, lemon, lemon, cipher. This key here is supposed to decrypt it for you, which is pretty cool if you think about it. But the end result here, okay, is that no matter what you do with encryption, there is always something that can break it. Let's talk about MD5, MD4. MD4 has been broken since 2001, but Microsoft still uses it for Active Directory authentication. Major problem, major problem. So what do? We add another layer. Instead of changing the way it encrypts, just add more to it, making it more difficult. But then the problem is, by adding more, you just told the attackers what you're doing, because everyone has to know about it. The information is going to be leaked. And if they're already in your environment, they know what's going on. They're watching it. So what do? Nothing. You hope and pray that your encryption is strong enough for what you need. And to be honest with you, the encryption is only as good as the amount of time and data needs to protect. So paying for really expensive and strong ciphers are great, but what are you protecting? That's the key element. If you need a strong cipher, for what? What do you need it for? What are you doing with it? What are you trying to accomplish? And I'm hoping that you guys can understand this, because a lot of people will spend a lot of money buying these expensive ciphers and not protect anything. So then why spend all that money? Why waste all that money? Get what you need that can be broken in an amount of time that you need. So with veneer cipher, it's a very strong cipher, and it's strong for what the purpose that's intended for. Email. Does email require an incredible high level of encryption? No. It requires proper authentication with encryption, 2 layers. And by applying those layers, you're able to ensure the message, ensure that there's an encryption, and the integrity of the file. That's important. So understand that ciphers are being used as a component, not the only result, only feature. Now, AES. AES is very important because AES is our standard right now. There's AES 128, 192, 256, 512, and a few others. What that means is the amount of bytes, okay? Key byte, the amount of bytes it takes and it digests. Now, modern symmetric key algorithms, what they do is they take that data, those sections, and encrypt it. 256 bytes. So if you have a 10 gig file, every 256 bytes are being encrypted, and the whole thing at the end together. That's pretty cool. It's very fast and very secure. The government uses it, everybody's using it because they've realized that AES, not that it's difficult to crack, but it's in its own complexity, it is difficult to overtake. Remember I told you about time. If the encryption is strong enough, it buys you more time. Well, how much time? Well, that's the thing. An AES 128 in a proper establishment with the right hardware, you can crack it in about maybe 2 or 3 weeks. It's 128, it's not that big. 192, now we're talking a few months. 256, maybe 2 or 3 years or longer. That's by brute forcing it. 512, now you're talking 7 to 12 years. Now think about what I just told you about the data and time. Is the message or the information you're trying to send need to survive 2 or 3 months, 5, 7 years? How long? If you just need it to last a few hours, a weaker algorithm is not bad. So you're not spending thousands of dollars on a strong algorithm and does you no good. Because remember, the stronger the algorithm, the more computational power it needs to decrypt it. Okay, it's all mathematical calculation. So AES is used for web communication for the most part. It's being applied more places, but Wi-Fi can use it. WPA2 is part of AES. That's what it's using. Now, mobile apps, LastPass, WhatsApp, Microsoft, you name it, they all are using AES. And the reason why they're using AES is because the government, NIST has approved it for usage. That is an incredible element. Huge element. Now, many software languages are supporting AES because they've realized if everybody's using it, why not us? For VPN, it's being applied. Now, not your traditional VPN where you can use it, log in, and go and be somewhere else. I'm talking about site to site, meaning business on one side of the country, and on the other side, now they have a VPN tunnel where that whole data going back and forth from site to site is being encrypted. That's the value in what it brings. Now, that will require a much higher level of encryption, AES 256, AES 512, and so forth. And if you want to check the encryption being used, that link in the slides can be used to see that on websites. But I want to give you an idea. I'm going to give you a scenario. If I wanted to send a laptop to somebody somewhere, should I encrypt it? What do you think? Should it be sent? Should it be prepared? Should it be, I don't know, sent somewhere? The answer is yes, you should encrypt it. And the thing about it is why you should encrypt it is because by encrypting it, you're ensuring that that equipment, no matter if someone got their hands on it, they're not going to break into it. They're not going to break data, and they're not going to break into the information because you've applied that encryption. Okay. One side note, if you guys have questions, by all means, put it in the questions and answers, and I'll try and answer them as much as I can, okay? Public key cryptography. So let's step back a little bit here. Public key cryptography is basically how we communicate with people. We have two keys, public and a private key. And what that means is that our public key is used to disseminate into the world. Our private keys for us. Let's say I wanted to send an email to you. I would use your public key to encrypt data. And then I would send it to you because your public key is what is your private key is used to decrypt your public key. And that's how that works. So that's how we were able to get around giving each other keys. Because what we needed was to have a centralized place, a key exchange, or a CA authority that allows us to maintain our keys and maintain all these public keys in one space. So when you send your Gmail and you send your emails and so forth, you're using the public key of those people to do this. Now think about that for a second. So how do we know if a public key gets compromised? How do we know if someone doesn't change it? Well, the private key. If somebody altered the public key, the private key won't work. Because remember, the private key is the lock, the key to the lock. That when you put that private key in, it unlocks the data, it opens up and it opens it up. If I mess with that public key, then I have a problem. Data's gone. Well, the sender still has it, but the point is the recipient can't open it. So it became almost a wonderful solution for us. And it's great, but there are ways around it though. There are always ways. Attackers try to capture the private key. Now, these keys are based upon a mathematical one-way function. It's called a hash. Okay, these hashes are digest. Now, to solve the key exchange in an unsecured channel, this is where the whole asymmetric key encryption came in. Then we have PKI, public key exchange infrastructure. So here's an example of what we were talking about earlier about the public key exchange. So for example, law Alice, a large random number key generation program, so public, private. Bob sends a message to hello Alice. He encrypts it with Alice's public key. And it gets encrypted, and there's the encryption. Sends it to Alice. Alice receives it using Alice's private key. She's able to decrypt. This is a perfect example of how a public key in the public key infrastructure works. Now, the RSA crypto system. Let's take a second here because the mathematical function is crazy. It's right here. It's MED mod equals N equals M. This whole mythology here is pretty crazy. You have to really understand the mathematics behind it. It's the most widely used crypto key in exchanges for public key systems, RSA. Any website you go to uses RSA. Why? Because it's the most accepted. Remember earlier I told you about standards. This is where standards come in. Okay. One thing I will tell you about RSA, they've gone through a lot of changes, a lot of upgrades, a lot of modifications because they've realized that RSA had a weakness. I believe about 6 or 7 years ago, this encryption was cracked, the algorithm. And what they figured out was every time the algorithm was ran, it produces a hash, a different one every time. So you will see these crypto keys with different numbers. Every few minutes, you get new key, new key, new key, new key. Well, if they knew one of the keys, they can guess every other key moving forward. That's how incredible it was. That attack was pretty impressive. So the crypto algorithm chooses two large prime numbers, let's say P and Q. Let N equal P and Q. Then this is the rest of the algorithm here. Minus P minus 1, Q minus 1, multiplied together equals whatever this function here. Then you choose E over N, such as E is relative to the prime number. It computes D, such as E mod, E and ED mod, and here you go. The public key is just D. That's it. So the inside, the N cipher is C equals ME mod M. The decipher is the opposite. M is the option. So C and M are the main components. Do you want to use a calculator? Here's a perfect example of how to use it. Now, let's take a second and think about this. Your identity, your signature, your who you are. Have you ever signed for a document or signed anything in the past? Well, that's where it comes down to. Your signature is used to authenticate and the integrity. You remember I said earlier about CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Well, but two other components. There's non-repudiation and authentication. This still falls under that triad. Now, to ensure that a message is legitimate from a user and it hasn't been altered, we need to ensure the integrity of the file. Why? Ensuring where it's coming from. The authentication proves who did it. So your emails or your documents that are coming to you have to go through what's called a review. System has to check where is it coming from, who is it going to, is it signed, is it authenticated, and is the data accurate? So that certificate inside the email, that S-MIME or DKIM, has all that data about the email, even the hash. And if the email hash and the certificate don't match, you have a problem. So this digital signature is a lot more than just what we thought of. It introduces that non-repudiation. And non-repudiation basically means that we cannot deny that we did something. Okay? Implementation of a hash function, well, it's very simple. You calculate the hash. And a public key cryptography, it's all about hashes. So cryptographic hash function. What does that mean? Well, a one-way function mapping a message to a fixed size. And what's important here, depending on which algorithm you use, you're going to get a digest. I can use 200 gigs into a hash and get 128 characters. That is the mathematical calculation equivalent to that data, even though it cannot be reversed, but that is the value of that data. It's deterministic because it's determined based upon the binary data, the ones and zeros in a file. And a perfect example is if I grab 3 files. Give me a second, I'll work on it and get show you guys what I'm talking about. But if you get 3 files and you try to do the same thing, you're going to realize that these files are, well, they don't work. No matter what you do, it's the same thing. Let's see here. So a quick compute the hash and value given a message. That's the most important thing. It's infeasible to generate a message that yields a hash value. Now, I'm going to try and see if I can show you an example of what I'm talking about. Okay, so here, I'm going to show you something here. So you guys can see this. I am going to drop some files in here. Test 1 and test 2. What's funny is if you notice, test 1 and test 2 have different hashes, different names, and different hashes. Now, here's going to get really interesting. I'm going to create one more file. And I'm going to call it test 3. And if you notice, test 3 and test 2 have the same hashes right there. But test 3 and test 2 have the same data inside of it. They both have the word password, but their names are different. And to see it even closer, I'm going to remove all these other algorithms. There it is. Test 2, test 3, same hash. Test 1 has a different hash. Test 1 has the word administrator. Test 2 and 3 has the word admin. And there you go. That's what I'm talking about. When it comes to cryptography, we're focused on the data, not the name. And when looking at hashes, that is the exact same thing. You're focused on the data, the binary data. It does not matter that you have the same name, the same document, it does not matter. And if I create a new file with the same data, the same hash it'll produce, regardless of where it came from. It's the binary data. So it's infeasible to generate a message that yields its hash value because you cannot change a hash. You change it by new data. It's infeasible to find different messages that are the same hash value. It is because wherever you go, these hash values are stored somewhere. And a perfect example is right here. Go back to the website. Backstation. And if you look right here, you can download all these hashes. It's a 190 gigabyte file. Just download it and it'll have all that data. You can go also to hashes.com. Guess what? Same thing. You put in the hash, it will give you the result. And if I check this, watch. Doesn't recognize it. Did I copy it right? Identify it. Oh. Let's try and do it here then. Well, let me find a website. Well, here you go. Well, I look up that website. So the digital signature, you notice the input is Fox. The cryptographic hash runs through the digest. The red fox jumps over the red bulldog. Again, hash function, new one, a new one, a new one. Every single item you put into the hash will produce a new digest. The message authentication code is part of the digest. Now, digital signatures, PKI. We're going to take a second here and review this. Okay. The sender sends a message with the public key again and a hash value. The receiver gets the hash algorithm, the hash value, the sender's key, and signed message. This is the whole process of that PKI. Now, the problem with PKI is that PKI tends to depreciate because keys can only live for so long. They have an expiration date. So if you encrypt something with PKI today, and then 5 years you try to use a new key, if you got it from the same place with the same key value, then yes, it'll work. But if you got it from a different place and they didn't use the old key, then you have a problem. So you have to store all those old keys, which is why if you notice, Microsoft doesn't delete any of their certificates or keys. What they do is they basically keep them there, even though they're expired, because of Windows Update. Windows Update has a problem where your computer cannot update unless that key is there. If that key has been removed because of it's an expiration, you can say goodbye to your updates. You can say goodbye to everything because it doesn't exist. So public key versus symmetric key. A public key exchange over unsecured channels is a problem because that key, that public key is there. What's stopping me from sending you a email with somebody else's public key? You're going to think it's from them. Again, another attack type, phishing. All this comes into play when you're thinking about phishing. Phishing is a major component, and you can use websites like, let me see here, I'm sure you want to. Here's a perfect example. I can use this as from me or somebody else from that email, anybody's email. The tool is going to go to the subject, attachment, and message, and they'll receive it like it's from them. And if you have their public key, it's even better. Now, symmetric keys are higher data throughput because it's easier to decrypt them. And then hybrid crypto systems. It's a public key for key exchanges. Symmetric keys for data communication are being used for emails, data transmissions, and so forth. I have a hard time saying this, but Kirchhoff principle. A cryptographic system should be secure even if everything about the system except the key is public knowledge. Think of that statement real quick. And again, if you guys have questions, put it in the questions and answers, and I'll review them. Okay? Security through obscurity is considered dangerous because if you're trying to hide in plain sight, what are you hiding from? Why are we hiding? That's a major component because you don't realize it, but all these systems that we're using cause a major problem because all these systems that are trying to hide, for example, if we try to use a remote desktop and we use a common port 3389, well, everyone knows that. Everyone's used it. That's a major problem. By using that, then we have to figure out, is it exposed? Is it available? Who can log into it? Do we have the proper authentication? By changing the port from 3389 to, I don't know, whatever, 4000, you're obscuring the data. So attackers have to now figure out what's going through that port, capture it, and try to see it. Open discussion encourages better security. That's a big one. Think of DEF CON and all these conferences are going on for security. By us discussing it, reviewing it, and going over and over the problems and discussing the situation, we are identifying there is a problem. There is a need for security. There's a need to improve it. And as attacks come and go, we tend to forget the simple things. I'm going to show you an example here. Here's a website called the Hacker News. You can see all the attacks are coming through. Secure user authentication method. You know, CSA warns of affecting industry controls. Backdoors created and leaked by CIA Hive, malware. There's so many things here that are going on. And guess what? At the end of the day, it's all bad. Okay. Here's another piece here. Multi-factor authentication. So Uber hack by multi-factor is a growing threat in enterprise because as we are trying to use these higher level securities, these encryptions and so forth, that's great. But an encryption is only as good as the person using it. MFA fatigue, also MFA bombing or MFA spamming, basically means that we are using these tools. Attacker finds a number, tries to authenticate, and they're going to drive you crazy. They want you to accept that authentication. And then when they do, they're in. And that's the problem. So again, security through obscurity can be dangerous. Now, crypto analyst, we're going to get to what this means. Ciphertext is only attacks. Technically, a ciphertext is used to hide confidentiality, that data, in plain sight. Known plain text attacks are basically trying to get your data and try to convert it so they can see it. Chosen plain text attacks is another one. We're going to get into what all these mean in a second. But at the end of the day, chosen plain text attacks are sending you data that you may be considering plain text, but it's really encrypted. Chosen cipher attacks, another big one, man-in-the-middle attacks, side channel attacks, all these are just attacks. Well, at the end of the day, what is cryptography? Cryptography is the method of storing and transmitting data in a particular form that only those with whom is intended to read it. That's an important topic to understand. Cryptography is a closely related to disciplines of cryptology and cryptanalyst. Now, cryptography also includes taking images, words, and others and hide them in plain transit. Start thinking about stereotography. People hide data in pixels. Now, in today's computing-centric world, cryptography is almost something with scrambling. Now, what does it mean to scramble? It means move it around, mix it up, right? But we need to know how to put it back together right. And that's where the clear text comes in. Clear being plain, but cipher means to encrypt. So when you understand that process, it's a major component. So decryption is taking that encryption and putting it back into its place. Chosen plain attacks, we're going to go over adaptive chosen plain text attacks, chosen cipher, chosen key attacks, and rubber holes. Now, a chosen plain attack where a cryptanalyst attacker not only has access to the cipher and the associated plain text for several messages, so he can see the cipher being used, but also chooses the plain text that's encrypted. His job is to divide the plain text into several blocks so that he can reduce it, the key, and encrypt the message in an algorithm. The goal of choosing plain text is you take the words, encrypt them separately, and then smash them together. Then you got adaptive chosen, which is in a particular choice of plain text attack. It uses it changes the order of the data. So you can take the first one, the last one, put it together, middle, put it together, and then start changing around. Chosen cipher is where we can choose a set of encrypted messages and try to decrypt them into plain text with the same key. But the public key is needed. The method for attackers is using two keys, let's say key 1, key 2, maybe even key 3, and they use those keys in sections, section 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they move them around. That is it's called a attack on crypto systems. Once they figure out one key, they can start working the rest of them. And then chosen key attacks is where someone has information that has to do with different keys. Other keys are not yours. And based upon those keys, they can figure out your key. The last one is called a rubber hose. It's used by bribery, extortion, threats. Basically, is that you assume the first four are for cryptanalysts to complete, but the last one is for someone to go after, meaning they're going to come after you for it. So at this point, do we have any questions? Okay, no questions, then I guess, thank you. If not, I'm ready to hear questions or answer questions.
Hey, Ivan, as we are logged in on other platforms, we are live. I see there is a question here. It says, how easily AI can be used for brute force attacks?
Good question. Very easy. I'll show you an example. Here's a company called Coalfire. They're a cloud-based system. They're developed for open source password cracking, but they also use encryptions. And they released something called NPK. Well, this system right here called Coalfire is cheap. It is not that expensive. You're probably going to spend maybe $10 cracking a password, maybe less. And it's using AWS systems. So granted, you have to understand how to use AWS, but it's not that hard. And if you notice, NTLM batches of Active Directory passwords, WPA2 passwords. It can test them and break them quickly. So this is not a form of AI, but it's a form of algorithm that uses an AI base. Another one is ChatGPT. There's a lot of people in that system right now, but ChatGPT can be used. If you ask the right question, it'll digest it and crack it. We've been able to prove that it can take simple tasks and use them. You can train AI on TensorFlow, on Google's TensorFlow for password cracking. It can do it. The problem you run into, again, like I've been saying since the beginning, is the ability to digest, run through the computational power to reverse it. And like I showed you with CrackStation and hashes, you can download what they already have and build a really good machine to go after it. So hopefully answer that question.
Thank you. I see another one popping up here. It says, package captures softwares like Wireshark can get the cipher key.
No, Wireshark cannot decipher a key. It can capture it. And you can use other tools to do that.
Now, another very question here, which most of us from non-technical background would have, it says, hi, sir, is it hard to study the cybersecurity even without any experience or zero knowledge?
Well, I can tell you a little bit about my background and tell you that I started in cyber back in the 90s when it didn't exist. And I've been teaching it and making it my profession because it's a passion. I've taken students that don't know anything all the way to becoming hackers. So yes, it can be done.
Thank you. I have one here from Harry. He says, please, can I have the materials available for future reference?
Yeah, it should be posted. That's more a question for you guys. I've already given my material so that you guys can use it. And to add more to that question about the zero experience, I'm gonna give you a question, and maybe I want you guys to answer it on your own. Don't worry about me. I'm gonna ask away a question. You work in an environment, you know that there's weaknesses, you know that there's a problem, meaning you know that there's a door that doesn't close right. You know that people are very vulnerable. You know that maybe there's a trick to get past something. You're already working in something that you feel uncomfortable. And you're looking at things, you're going, man, this is not that difficult. You're probably analyzing, going, there's nothing stopping me from breaking this. When it comes to this kind of cyber world, you don't have to take on the entire world of cyber. You can take it into pieces to learn Microsoft, learn cloud, learn networking. And then my advice would be learn what we call the foundation. How do you build a house? You start with the foundation and you build up. Start with the core components and then start building your knowledge and then again your experience. And what that'll do is it'll help you understand the higher level cyber problems. You can get into forensics, pen testing, all that other great stuff, but you have to have a good foundation. Okay. Can you overview how many courses in cybersecurity? That's more of a question for the program. What is the starting point to start? I always tell my students Microsoft, either Linux or Microsoft. Microsoft because you're already accustomed to using it, but Linux is a good start. What is the biggest challenge that you ever have? Biggest challenge. Okay, I'll give you an example. I had to go to another country and help out in a situation that they were having where they very, very political. And what I had to go do there was I had 72 hours to conduct a forensic report, a forensic review of equipment that was being used by a certain group and provide an answer and provide a solution to their problem. Took me a little longer, but I did figure it out. And what I ended up finding was these people were using company hardware to host a underground website with I hate to say this, but it was pornography, but not of adult, it was child pornography. And that was probably one of my hardest challenges I had to do because it wasn't a question of being able to do it. It was more about the time. Some of these jobs we work on, we can work on it for 2 or 3 weeks or a month or two, but that one, because we had basically 3 days, was a major challenge.
Thank you. Now I have another one here. It says, can cryptography also help in preventing ransomware attacks?
Not prevent. See, cryptography is a tool. Ransomware, okay, your laptop probably has BitLocker or some encryption tool already. Great. The problem is when you're using it, your computer is decrypted. And if I drop ransomware on a decrypted computer, encryption's not going to help you. It doesn't work. It's already decrypted, and I'm going to encrypt it with something else. What will help you is proper application armor, proper an antivirus, some sort of protection piece. That's what will help you.
Thank you. So I have another question coming up. It says, how is blockchain technology related to the cryptography domain?
Well, cryptography is basically the infancy of blockchain. Blockchain is basically like the next level of cryptography because they're using cryptography amongst many systems, meaning they use a ledger. If everybody has the ledger and the ledger has all the data, you cannot modify that for every computer at every time instantly. So by having everybody having that ledger, it ensures that everybody can keep everybody else honest, basically. Because when you really think about what we're trying to do, blockchain technology takes the block of data, produces a hash, and that produces into a ledger. The ledger then is where the source of truth is. That's where the integrity comes from. If someone modifies a blockchain, They modified it in one space, one ledger, not all the ledgers. And we're talking millions of ledgers. So for someone to, let's say, hack into a blockchain platform, they would have to modify every single ledger at the exact same time when it occurs. And that, even though it hasn't been accomplished, I can almost guarantee you AI is going to assist with that.
I hope this
Anything else?
answers for the person who was answering this question. Now here, where cryptography is used in real life.
Say that one more time.
Where cryptography is used in real life.
Geez, email, your phone, all your phones are encrypted. That's cryptography. Every email you send has encryption. Every time you log into a platform, encryption. Every time you log into a Windows computer, encryption. Every time you're using like right now, we're using Zoom. Zoom has encryption. That's cryptography. It's using a symmetric key, but it's still encryption. Encryption is basically part of everything we do. I'll give you a better example. When you log into your bank and you see the HTTPS and the little lock on the web browser, that's encryption. So you're using it everywhere.
Great, thank you. So I do not see any more questions. We can wait for another maybe 2 minutes if there is anyone who wants to ask a question.
Even if it's about cyber, you can go ahead and ask. I don't mind asking cyber questions. What problems can cyber cryptography solve? Well, identity, non-repudiation, validation, and honestly, cryptography is used to keep honest people honest. Let's be very factual here. If I try to impersonate you with a phishing email and it's encrypted, then, well, you'll know because it's not encrypted and not from me. So it solves a lot of the issues we're having with spam, phishing, and impersonation. So yeah, there's a lot that it can solve. Any other questions?
I don't see any other question coming up.
What is the weakest cryptography? Oh man. Well, DES, Blowfish, AES 128, AES 192, MD1, MD3, MD4, MD5, basically all of them, because they all have weaknesses. They all have problems. None of them have been perfect. And to give you an idea how much more we talk about this, every year the government has a challenge where people develop algorithms and they'll take on the biggest and best one and test it further. That's how AES became the de facto for authentication. But if you notice, they're using AES 256. That's the minimal standard right now. Well, unfortunately, it's already reaching its end of life. And we're going to have to move into AES 512. China is already on AES 786. So there you go. How can a data scientist analyst use crypto analysts? You ever heard of Alan Turing? The guy that cracked the Enigma? Well, he was a data scientist and he used the study of cryptography to be able to crack the Enigma. So that's a simple form, but cryptography is used in everything, literally everything. And in data science, well, how are you going to know if something is being treated correctly, if data is being sent correctly, if data is being used correctly, and if data is encrypted, you have to decrypt it to use it. Is it possible to overview cybersecurity where we start first? Entire overview. I'm trying to understand your question. You gave me four of them. Well, cybersecurity, I would say Microsoft is a good start. From Microsoft, I would recommend learn networking. From networking, I would say learn cloud, because after you move from Microsoft networking to cloud, you've learned how to build an on-premise and off-premise platform. You learn how to make it all communicate and talk. From there, I would tell you to focus on learning some Linux to bring in some Linux servers in the cloud. And then after that, applying some security pieces, so networking security, some SIEM and some cyber structure information. Then I would say from there, learn how to code. Python's a big one. It's gonna help you with automation. After that, I will tell you to start focusing on something like ethical hacking or forensics or incident response. That's the direction I would say that fits the best. If it takes a simple topic, builds and builds and builds and builds and builds, and then hits you with the big topics. You have networking experience. Okay, good. I worked 12 years in Linux experience. Good. Do you have your certification in Linux? How many programming languages I need to learn for cybersec? For cybersecurity, I would say to learn and to be proficient, I would say one, Python. Python can do Java, Python can do .NET, Python can do them all. But if you want to be, I don't want to say proficient, I want to say educated, learn Java, but not to the level of an expertise, to understanding of it. Understand Java, understand HTML, understand PHP, understand at least some of assembly code, and have a good understanding of C. After that, it's up to you. Those understanding, they're going to help you with developing your knowledge. See, as a security analyst, you need to review code or review programs or review access and so forth. And if you can't understand the logic of the code, then that's the problem. That's great. You have a lot of experience, but have you taken the certifications? Have you proven you can do it? And lastly, if you have all that experience, why not pursue something like Cisco CyberOps? It's a great certification that brings in security with your networking experience and it uses Python. Okay. Any other questions?
No more questions, Ivan.
Okay, perfect. Then thank you everybody for your time and I appreciate it.